Everyone, thanks for joining us for this Pittsburgh Sitecore user group. I'm Kamruz Jaman. A lot of you will know me from the community as Jamicam, and I'm a 12-time Sitecore MVP, and I've been working on the Sitecore platform since the end of 2009, beginning of 2010.
I'm Mike. I only came because I heard there's free pizza. No, I'm better known as the Sitecore Junkie in the community. I'm a 10-time Sitecore MVP. You see me all over the place, at least you used to, but you can still find me on Slack. All right, so this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the history of forms and its evolution within a Sitecore context, why you'd want to go with XM Cloud Forms today, the key features that come with this product, and Kamruz is going to deep dive into a demo and show us this thing in action and future enhancements that we are going to see, hopefully, and that we would like to see. All right, so this is my favorite slide on here because of the timeline. It lets me think about the past. One thing that's not on here is like how people did this way before web forms for marketers existed. People were rolling their own forms, storing wherever the form submissions go into maybe bespoke, custom databases, or sending it somewhere else or wherever. But then like the people started asking Sitecore for like a module to make it easier for non-technical content authors to create forms. And that's where web forms for marketers came from. Back then it was completely web forms based. It's a little complicated at the time, but over time the product did start to roll out lots of different features. And then eventually the community asked for MVC support because everybody had moved to MVC. They rolled that in. And then later on, version 8X, they came out with Experience Forms, which was a completely new product feature for Sitecore, completely revamped, completely rebuilt, different from web forms for marketers, which Kamruz and I presented at SUG EU in Berlin in 2018. Then later on, because the world was moving headless, Sitecore added in JSS React Forms.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Mike, we of course did present this at SUG Berlin 2018. It was, I think, so for Experience Forms was released end of 2017, right, with the release of Sitecore 9.0, right? I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're right. I got the version and the dates wrong, but
yeah,
it's all a blur now.
Yeah, and I think compared to web forms for marketers, this was a pretty big change, right? It was the interface had obviously been revamped, much more modern. Documentation actually was pretty decent for especially for that being the initial release.
Right.
And I think one of the comments we did hear quite a lot was, obviously it was the initial release. It was people were comparing web forms for marketers, particularly the very end of web forms for marketers, and all the features that were available in there, particularly the out of the box submit actions. And people were comparing it and saying, well, this is missing and that is missing as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it was in development for 8 years, while Experience Forms was in development for what, like maybe 8 months at the time. So big difference. Right? Yeah, maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
And granted, it was going to take time to get up to the same like feature parity. It would take, well, hopefully not 8 years, but a lot shorter time, but still not within 8 or 6 months.
And the other thing, of course, with web forms for marketers is that there was like zero documentation, like barely anything
at the outset. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, even at the beginning and also on the outset of it, some pages.
No, we had blog posts.
Okay, I was going to say that was you, right? That was you and partially me towards the end, and the community, right. Obviously. That was the documentation with lots of help of lots of dot peeking. And as we were preparing for this presentation, I reminded you that you had kind of pushed me, or forced me into doing a web forms for marketers deep dive because Michael West had been asking for some information on how it worked, and what was available and how you could customize it and things.
When we were talking about this the last time, I started thinking about that. Yeah, I was skirting Michael for about 1.5 years. He was asking me to do it, and then somehow I coached him into doing it, and then it turned into a 2-hour webinar, which I completely forgot about.
Yeah.
But
well, it actually started off as a private little demo,
right,
for Michael, and then we were like, well, I've got into all this trouble and there's nothing available. I might as well just open it up and have an open webinar for anybody to join, and ended up presenting it at a weekend very randomly, which I very often do. But here you go. So why do these forms matter? Everyone seems to want these things, Mike. Why?
It's because they don't want to have to go to a software engineer or developer to make changes for them. Well, I guess I'm jumping the gun here. Forms matter because forms are a way to do multiple things. Businesses can generate leads with forms. Businesses can interact with their customers through forms, or just like maybe have escalation issues or something through a form. There's lots of different reasons why a company would want to generate forms on their websites, and they definitely want to do it fast. They don't want to have to rely on a developer, which is what I was going to get into, because developers have competing priorities and we're expensive to implement changes. You just want to have a content author go create a form on the fly, get it out there, and just have people start using it immediately, or take it down quickly, without having to wait for the next development cycle, sprint, whatever, deployment. It's all about being agile, to be honest. Lest your competitors will get you. They'll beat you to it.
Yeah, I'd say this. I think forms is something that every project I've worked on has ever had. And the web forms of marketers or the experience forms module is something that every single Sitecore project I've worked on has always needed or wanted, or had it used throughout their website. This is almost the number one requirement, I'd say, for any of the projects I've worked on. And as you know, as you mentioned as well, like the for that timeline, the historical view is people would develop custom forms, and then you code in the logic, you code in the validation, you code in all the actions that need to happen, and then you got to get it deployed. And at least for me, like historically, way in the past, our deployment processes probably were not as nimble and automated as they are these days. We have nice Azure DevOps or Octopus deploy pipelines and things like that to get these deployed out much more quickly, but there's still an entire process that needs to be followed, right? In terms of the developer working on it, it going through the QA processes, it going through the various business sign-offs and things before it can even make it into a production environment. And using these modules, of course, you just treat it as content.
Exactly. It's about being quick. Okay, we're going to talk about XM Cloud Forms. Completely new feature built on the SaaS product offered by Sitecore. So composable forms, completely composable. It's all built into the SaaS product itself. It is a standalone application, completely decoupled from the content management system. It is completely composable so that things just interact. You send things out, send things off. Works under a headless paradigm, completely no code, very low code. Come on, Cam, there's no code in here. I haven't seen any code yet. It seems like it just works. And definitely seamless to get updates because it is a SaaS product. Sitecore will make those changes, and once they're out, they're out. You get them. You don't have to do any upgrades. You don't have to do any releases. You'll just get those magical things.
I have to say low code, Mike, as well, to keep myself relevant. Otherwise, I'll be out of a job, right? So we have to say low code.
I guess. I mean, we could just go to the movies, man.
Yeah.
Anyways, XM Cloud, we're gonna see this in a demo, but we got a really slick drag and drop form builder. Just drag fields right onto a canvas. You start putting things together. It's all magical and it's very fast. You can see things in different viewports or different devices. You can see what it will look like on a mobile device or a tablet or even a desktop computer. You see it in real time, through the editor. What you see is what you get. You don't have to do any wonkiness with CSS classes or anything like that. What you see will virtually be what it looks like. And it's completely separate from experience forms, completely in Sitecore in general. And everything interacts through a webhook. So basically, that's just like a API you send your form payload off to. You can back that. We're going to talk about this, but you can back it by authentication and things like that. And you don't have to worry about handling sensitive data.
Yeah, so of course there is no save actions, submit actions anymore, right, Mike?
That's right. Yeah. Don't need them anymore. And that was like the bulk of our work.
That was like 95.3% of our work, right?
Right.
We do the other like another 3% was probably trying to figure out bootstrap classes, right? And styling.
Exactly. And it never looked right.
Yeah. Somebody always come back and it doesn't look right on mobile view.
So out of the box, you get a bunch of form field types. And as I mentioned before, it's a SaaS-based product. So any new form fields that get released, you'll get them magically. Right now, there are 14 out of the box. Keep in mind, this is brand new. You can set validation on your different fields. Very easy to do this. We're going to see that. You can style them very easily without having to know magical CSS stuff. That's definitely something that's valuable to content authors who don't want to learn how to do that. And me as a backend developer, I don't want to learn how to do that. And then you have basic form fields that you would expect in a form. Alas, there's no credit card field. I'm sorry if you wanted that, but let's face it, we never really needed that. But yeah, we're going to take a look at this stuff. And then you can easily just lay out your form quite easily without having to know bootstrap CSS classes. You could just drag on a layout sort of thing that will columnize your form fields. And you can start dragging form fields into those different columns. And we'll take a look at that. And it's very responsive. As the slide says, you can see it in different devices. You'll be able to see it in a mobile, tablet, or desktop view. And I'm assuming you can drag and drop like this, and it will be responsive in that way, TM. I don't know if that's true, but
yep.
Is it?
There is
okay.
You don't get a tablet view. I can show you that, but there is a mobile and a desktop view that you can edit on.
What about a cinema theater view?
Yeah, not everyone has this nice big sofa and big TV to work off like you, Mike.
Fair enough. Yeah, so it also supports multi-page, or aka maybe wizard forms. That's what I like to call that, where you can break multiple form fields into chunks to make it easier for users to navigate through, a workflow of some sort. You don't want to have 500 form fields on one page. It might be unmanageable. Just break it up, and you can go to page 1, page 2, page 3, and so forth. And then there's out-of-the-box templates that you can just start from. So there's, for example, there's like a contact us sort of thing, or there's a feedback thing. You just drag it onto there and just start changing things. Sometimes content authors may not know what fields they want. So this will give them a starting point, a foundation to build on top of. And you can even use the look and feel. Everything just comes with it.
Yeah, and the great thing is, of course, you can predefine a set of a template yourself. It will give you can set up your brand colors, your brand themes, your brand fonts, your brand, following your brand guidelines, of course. So that gives you some consistency with all the forms that you're building, and obviously quick and easy reuse as well.
Right? And webhooks, we mentioned, you don't store the data in your own SaaS-based Sitecore instance. You set it up somewhere else. You could connect this with Sitecore Connect, possibly, right? Or you can use some other tool that we're going to show. It's an API call. That's all it is. It's sending JSON from your form off to somewhere else. It consumes it, does whatever it has to do with it, and it can put it through a workflow where it takes actions on that data that was submitted at every different steps that you can define.
Yeah, exactly. You could use any integration platform to set this up with. So I've got an example with Zapier, but as you mentioned, Mike, Sitecore Connect is also a great one to use. And the good thing is, of course, whereas before you'd be custom coding those submit actions, as you said, here you just send it over to Zapier using a webhook or whatever integration platform you're using, and it's then the responsibility of that tool and that specific workflow that you set up to handle that data in whatever number of ways that you want it to. And that could be posting it into one place, it could be sending an email, it could be pushing it into Salesforce, it could be pushing it into some other CRM like HubSpot or whatever you're using. And you don't have to code it, right? It's a bunch of save actions that are already existing, and you just need to configure it for your particular use case. So that's a great, I think, time saver, and it will give a lot of additional power to those marketers that want to use these forms and collect data in a number of different ways. And as you mentioned, of course, none of that data is stored in Sitecore. So from Sitecore's point of view, it's great because you don't have to be responsible for somebody else's PII data. And then from our point of view, of course, as you mentioned, there's unfortunately no credit card form field, so we don't have to worry about this data kind of lingering somewhere in some external tool or some external system.
Or even like, you can combine different, let's say, personal identification sort of things with people, combine them together and you can steal somebody's identity. So it's good to not have, your hands on that necessarily, have another platform that knows how to handle that data better, have them manage it. Just easier. And it's a concept of pages, just as you would expect it to be. It's a web page, you drag your form right onto it, and there you go. You just set it up and just get it out there.
Yeah, it's super quick, right? Using the Pages application, it just appears, and then there you go. You have a form, and I'll demo that as well, just to show you guys that integration. So it is a separate product for XM Cloud Forms is a separate product than Sitecore Pages and XM Cloud. These are composable products, but they all work seamlessly together.
All right.
Right, demo time.
Let's have a look. Show me my credit card field.
Do you want to put it in? Do you want to,
yeah, put it in.
Do you want to tell me your number, and I'll go do some shopping for everyone?
Yeah, I snagged your the last time I saw you.
All right. So straight off the bat, this is obviously Sitecore XM Cloud and the launchpad on XM Cloud. This should look familiar to pretty much anybody that's worked on Sitecore, especially 10.3. It's almost an identical interface, launchpad interface, apart from obviously we are XM Cloud. So these are our build tools. So we've got the Pages tool, the Components tool, the Explorer tool, and this is the new Forms tool. And if you're familiar with obviously XM, XP, the button is almost in exactly the same place, so it should be unfamiliar to you from the old Experience Forms button. Clicking on that will give us our Forms dashboard. Again, kind of similar looking. It's obviously in a list compared to Experience Forms, which had your icons, but familiar enough looking, similar enough looking, obvious enough, right? I have created a couple of test forms, and I'll go through the process of creating a new form as well. But you can see I've got my list of forms. I can filter by a number of labels. And so that's a quick and easy way of just filtering those forms out. I'll do that. Okay. Test and so on and so forth. Pretty quick, very responsive. I can also filter by status. Obviously, I can also filter by any string as well. Creating a new form. I don't say fix that. So straight off the bat, very clean interface. You'll see as we go along, some things will seem very familiar. We've got our kind of controls on the left-hand side, some controls at the top for the form settings and the save and exit at the top right. But in the top left, we have a template library where we can go in and select a template to start off from. We can preview those templates from here as well. So let's get some views on responsiveness. And then we can also use those templates to build out our site from. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and create something new. Okay, so I can drag and drop in a bunch of different containers to build out a site. So it's pretty responsive in how you build this thing in, right? That you can start adding them within various locations. I got a couple of ways of adding controls onto the page. I've got my items listing, and then within there, those are the 14 forms that Mike had mentioned, as well as some basic UI components in there as well. I can also click on the plus icon, and that gives me the list of the different form elements that are available. And it's very responsive. I can go in, I've got a rich text editor. I can select a number of different fields. I can set some background colors and font colors and things like that. Drag those on there. Again, pretty simple. Just go in, add those things in. Very responsive, very easy to use. You then go ahead, drag in some forms, some fields in here. And it's pretty easy just to drag and drop these things in there. There are some custom form field types in here. For example, a date field. So the one I'm looking for, email field, right? Again, date field will allow you to have a date picker. Email is obviously pre-built for validation for email field. The styling of these forms, so I can go in, set the name. So this is essentially the ID of the form. Keep that in mind, set it to something useful rather than keeping the random string that it sets, because this is what it will send when you actually submit the form. So if you're going to then hook up your web forms, your web hooks in the background, you're going to want to have something meaningful and useful to you that you're using and consuming, and then sending on to downward services and stuff, right?
Basically, this is a JSON property name for the field.
Yeah. And I can demo that as well as part of that. I'll leave this one as it is for now, and then have my obviously my labels that I can set up. I can set validations, so just make this one required. I can set character limits, set some things like padding and things like that. Placeholder text. Now, as you can see, as I'm typing that, like immediately this is showing up. I'm not having to hit save. I'm not having to even remove the focus from that box. It's just updating immediately. The required field as well. You can see it's just adding that asterisk in there. And you can also add in some additional help text if you like. You'll also notice that as when I dragged on that first component, straight away it just added on a submit button, because I'm going to need a submit button on the form, right? I can move that on to the end location. I can also set in set that as well. There are a number of different options for styling these elements. So I can set the field background colors, the border widths, radiuses. These are all defaulted. Font sizes, field decorations as well. Is that entering? Okay, that's the field itself. That's the internal font of that. I can set the label styles as well. I can hide the labels. I can set label colors. Even set the asterisk color, right? Yeah, this one doesn't have one, but I can even set the asterisk color as well. separately the placeholder font, and then separately the help text as well. I can hide that. I can also hit apply to all, which again hides it for all of the elements, gives it some consistency, right, across your entire form. So one of the things that, another nice little element in here is the reCAPTCHA. Out of the box again, it uses Google reCAPTCHA. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to set anything up, but it will just add that in there. It will just add in that bot and spam protection. One of the things that Mike had mentioned is the ability to add multi-page forms. So again, just hit add, and it's really nice. It literally just copies across the structure you've just set up for that first form. Whether you use it or not, of course, is up to you. Like I might not want to have some of these elements in there. I can go in and clean those up. But it sets that element up and it's there ready for us to use. If we want it, we can go back in and add in whatever additional form fields and form layouts that we want and that we need. I can then start filling up those placeholder fields. So select whatever things I want. There's a few little form fields, number fields, radio buttons, checkbox groups, right? Whichever types of fields that you want. Now with these list type forms, again, you get all the same kind of options, with the name, the labels, and help fields, whether it's required. And then we also get the ability to add additional options on there, and you can see it just adds it. It's very, very quick. It's very visual. We only have the option to add statically defined lists. We don't have the option to select a list of items from Sitecore, which we had been used to in like all previous versions of the module. And the rationale, at least for me, the rationale behind this is a standalone composable product. If we start adding in the ability to go and select a list of items from within Sitecore XM Cloud, it's no longer a standalone product. It's no longer a composable product. You've hard tied this in some way to your Sitecore XM XP instance. So to me, it makes sense. And then you don't have to worry about things like, I'm selecting a list of data source items from Sitecore. What's the template type of those items? I have to match that up to here, and I got to know the template type. Now I've also got to make sure that when I publish this form, that those templates and those items that are linked to it have also been published. And it kind of opens up a can of worms in the composable world. Maybe there'll be a different option where you can select it from, I don't know, some other sort of a list. But yeah, a hard tie into Sitecore is a no-no in this world. And I will also show you while I'm doing this. And I can actually drop in an image component. Double click this, which will allow me to select an image. I did upload one from my local file system earlier, but I can also just post in a direct link to an image on the web somewhere. I can select a bunch of images from Unsplash, quite nice because these are royalty-free stock photography, I believe. Giphy, because we all love some Giphy, right? You can also connect it to a Facebook account, Google Drive, Dropbox, Instagram, as well as OneDrive. Probably don't want to connect it to your personal account, but if you have a business account, right, you probably would want to connect it to your business account and then surface some images and some assets from there. You will notice again, there's no integration into Sitecore, and I can't select an image from the Sitecore media library. Again, for the same reasons that I just mentioned, you gotta worry about things like one, the hard-coded direct link back into XM, and then you've also got to go through this process of worry about is this published, is it not published, and things like that. Guess I don't have that image again. No. I can't even remember what that image is. Okay, I'll add this one in from my XM Cloud training that I did fairly recently, just to show you that there are some settings in here where you can add some styling and things like that, as well as like you can limit the size of the image and things like that, right? So it's not like you're not without any sort of control over the image. You can link an image and then update some parameters of that image. You can even set an image link and obviously the alt tag and things like that as well. Let me make that a little bit smaller so it's out of my way. One thing you'll notice as well is when I added in the additional form, this submit button became a next button. Submit button's been moved, as well as a back button added for any up to allow you to go backwards and forwards. It'll obviously do the validation and things like that as you go backwards and forwards between the pages of the form. And you will also notice this quite useful little exclamation mark in here, and hover on that, it says that the reCAPTCHA should be on the last page. And again, on here, the reCAPTCHA field should be on the last page, which makes sense, of course. If I'm going to submit this form, I really want this reCAPTCHA down here on this last page. I don't know. Yeah, I can move it, just not. Scroll. So I want that over here, which makes sense, of course. I want it on the last page. I don't want to fill in the reCAPTCHA on this first page. And then by the time I get to the second page and I go to submit the form, my reCAPTCHA's expired, and then I got to go back to the first page. It just doesn't make any sense. So from a UX perspective, I think those things are really nice, right? The fact is just move that submit button. The fact is added a next button onto the page, and the back button. From a UX perspective, I thought that was really neat and really clean, and well thought out. There is also a styling section to the left-hand side. This controls the general styling of the entire form. So you can go in, set various, obviously the form width itself, some border colors and things like that. But it also then allows you to just go in and set up the available fonts, the default fonts, the link colors. I don't actually know what slot is. I should look that up. Probably the form field sections that we're adding. You can set the validation messages, update those. Spaces, image colors, action buttons. So we can go in there and change the button color, for example. And I keep looking for a save button, but I don't need it. It's this modern interface where it just saves it automatically. But you will notice that my buttons are still the original color that I'd set it up for. It's going to remove this. I'll add it back in a second. One thing to note is this sets up the default. And again, it's also giving me a nice little warning up here that the button is missing, that I can't submit the form. But these default colors are exactly what I said. It's the defaults for those buttons. You can set the defaults up and then still go and override them. So it won't change the colors of things that are already on the page. But if I go and add a new button back here, up here with that, you'll notice it's the color that I have set as default. I can obviously still go in here and update that color to something else. Pick something a little bit dangerous, okay? And then I can actually go and apply to all, which will actually then update those. So a couple of different ways, just a little, not really a gotcha, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, but just something to watch out for. And then there's some social media links that you can add in because there is a social media component down here, right? So if you want to add those to your pages. So with all of these here, there's obviously a lot of settings. That's something you don't want to go and do every single time you're setting up a form. So this is where the templates come in use, right? I can go in, I can set these templates up. Let me actually. There was an Set on here somewhere. Oh, there you go. Add a background. Something nice because let's add that, right? So that's a background image. So makes it a little bit hard to read, but it'll do for the demo purposes. So you don't want to set all of this up every single time that you're going to set up a new form. You don't want to set up your colors, your default fonts, the submit button colors, and so on and so forth. And you may also want to just like reuse this form several times over, if it's a sign up form or something like that. So we have the ability to save it as a template, right? So I can go ahead and do that. Add to save. Now, when I go to create a new form, let me do this. I can go back to my template library, and that's a template I just created. It automatically generated a template icon for me. Didn't have to do anything. I can preview that again in much the same way as I had previously. I can use that template, and there you go. I have a new form ready to use without having to do anything. I can obviously now go in, update the text, update the form fields, and customize it for that particular one-time usage and one-time usage in that particular form that I need in that particular instance. Mike, you had mentioned the mobile view, so it looks like I can edit the general settings, but I can't actually add form fields and things like that on there. So I can view it, but I can't edit it, but I can obviously go back, edit it, and come back, right? There's also the preview version here, which gives you the tablet view. As you can see, my designing skills in this case have not been very good, and you can see the image is not the correct size, but if it's constrained within a specific width, then it'll be fine. But again, that gives you some different views. There's a version, so if you've got version history in there, that allow you to go back. I'll touch on comments in a minute. Comments are pretty neat. So I can go in and add some comments on here, and I can do that for multiple different ones. The comments, the actions will show up on the left-hand side. I can go and resolve those. I can view what's resolved and what's not resolved, and then obviously just click on those. It will show me what's that particular comment as well. It doesn't have workflow, right? So it's kind of like a way of doing some sort of a workflow without having to go through an entire workflow process.
It's like a Google Doc.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
Pretty much where you can just collaborate with others. By
yeah, there you go. Yeah, collaboration feature, right? So it's pretty neat. Now, I can also preview this, which I mentioned. So it's not required, but again, it gives me a nice little way of just checking that and then go into the next page and so on and so forth. But the Google, the robots as well. And I can't submit this because I don't have a webhook. The webhooks are available from this, from the settings page as well. There's a webhooks tab as well. I'm going to go in, and I do have one set up, which I'll demo in a second, but I'm going to go in and just show you the process of setting up a new webhook. You can go in, click Add Webhook. You've got a number of different options for the authentication of that webhook. So OAuth2 basic API key or no authentication. I'm going to show you a demo of this one using this website called Webhook Site. You can go here, just go to webhook.site, browse a thing. It will give you a URL with a unique code. I can go ahead and copy that, add that URL to the form, hit save, close, and now I can then select that webhook here. I can set some other options, so a failure message. I can also select one of my very few submit actions that are available, either redirect to URL or show a success message. And you can edit those. I can go back to my preview and I can test this. Don't call me, anyone, by the way. Select an option, I can select a couple of webhook options, and then I can hit submit. This should now show me a payload. So this is what is going to be sent to my webhook. It's going to be sent to this webhook, and this is the data. So when I had mentioned, and Mike had mentioned the name for your JSON field, this relates directly back to that name field when you added that form. So again, you can see those random numbers, make those a little bit prettier so that it'll make it easier for you to handle. And I'm not dealing with text D8846, which means nothing to me on a downstream system. And I'll show you that as an example. So hit submit, and there's my success message. Go back to my webhook site. You can see that I have a submission. So this is literally just what I just submitted. Really, really quick way of, again, testing this thing out. You can see where it's come from, and all the headers, as well as the data that's being sent, and in the format that's being sent. So as a developer, this is all I care about, right? I set up the form, it's submitted some data, I can see it's working to this particular test site. I'm kind of done on my job. I'm done with my job on the Sitecore side of things now. It's now somebody else's problem to go and handle that on the integration platform side, right? Take this form. So I had created a test form, which actually handles a post into Slack. And so when we had done the Sitecore user group SUGCon in Berlin in 2018, one of the things we had done is created a custom submit action, custom save action, and it posted using webhooks into the web forms marketers channel in Slack. And this was a custom integration that we built. It took a while, right, Mike, to build this out initially. And it's, you build the code and then you got to go into Sitecore Rocks and the back end and hook all of those things up. And there's quite a few steps, quite a bit of trial and error. We also had to figure out webhooks at that time and how to post into webhooks and format the message in the correct way and everything else that goes with that, right? So especially for nostalgia and for demo purposes, I wanted to do the same thing and I wanted to see how quick it was. So I built this form, very simple form. I just hooked it up with this integration into Zapier. I should probably have added a success message, but you'll get the idea. Now, one thing to note is where we have to go and save and activate this form to for it to appear and for us to be able to use it within the Pages application. Bear in mind that as soon as you activate your forms, you won't be able to edit the form anymore, right? So make sure it's a form that you actually want to activate. And I'll show you what that means in a second. So once this form is now active, and I cannot edit this form anymore. I can preview it, I can edit the settings, but I can't edit the actual form itself. So keep that in mind. If I want to do something with this, I have to duplicate it. And then I can go and edit the duplicate, but it's not the original form, right? So just keep that in mind. And then in the forms application itself, in timeout. Second for the form to load. And then in the component section, I now have this forms component, and you can see it creates the icon. Itself, again, is available. And just to show you how quick it is. Let me just activate that one as well. So I no longer care about that. This one. And again, components, like for forms, you can see it's available right now. I now have these two forms available. I can grab that, add that into my container, give it a second, and the form is added, right? It's as simple as that. It's like magic. Obviously, can't edit the form here. I've got to go back to the forms application for that. But it's I didn't have to write any code for this. This is a built-in application. This is all built in with forms and XM Cloud. Just make sure you're on version 21.6, I think, of the SDK, and you should be good for all of that. And yeah, important, make sure you save and activate the form, otherwise it will not show up in the forms section. That caught me out initially as well, had me scratching my head. And so we can go in and set this up. And then I have a demo of this. Again, submit. So this form has been submitted successfully to Slack. And then we can go up to Slack real time. And there you go. We have the same message posted. This is literally the same message from 6 years ago that we had posted to Slack. And I had to write absolutely zero code for this at all. Go ahead and delete that before people start complaining.
That's it. I'm going to tell you posted in the wrong channel.
Yeah, I'll get chastised for making a duplicate post. Did I miss? Oh, right. So my integration. I'll just show you the webhook that I had posted for the Slack. So I use Zapier. You could use Sitecore Connect, IFTTT, same as this demo form, demo one. I've literally just gone in, created a cat hook. There's a trigger for that, which has a URL here, right? My webhook URL. I use that for the webhook in forms. I then create an event to use a post, make a post to this specific URL, payload type of this in this specific format. And this is a format that Slack is expecting on that specific webhook. I grab the data that have been passed through. So again, this is important. You can run a test, which will then pick up some test data, which is what you can see. But these form fields are important. Form name field names are important because they will show through, like I said, cascade through as well. And then you can set up a number of different submit actions, right? I can go in and find if I can spell, I could find a Salesforce submit action, for example, and so on and so forth. So there's probably even one into there's ones into Google Docs. There's probably ones into Office 365 again. So lots of different options, no code, low code. If you wanted, of course, you could submit it to a custom function if you had something that you need to save into your own internal databases, right? You can create a custom Azure function and post it to that, and then let that handle that that data.
All right, so future enhancements that we should be seeing, hopefully soon. Right now, there's no multilingual support, so everything's just in English. Hopefully, soon we'll be able to change. I have the ability to like translate things and to have things be in different languages. I'm assuming you could create different forms of different languages, but you're going to have multiple versions of that one form. Conditional logic, which we do see in experience forms on XP, having, hey, if this has this in it, do this other thing, show these other fields. Right now, you can't do any of that sort of stuff with XM Cloud Forms. It is coming. Custom fields or other sort of custom bits for this thing. There is a section in there that says custom, but if you click on it, nothing shows up. That seems to be a hint that something is coming, so you can create your own custom fields. But as of now, we don't have that. Can't wait to see how that looks. There is no form analytics at the moment, so you have no idea if people are dropping out of form, certain fields, they're not filling them in, or if they just don't focus on certain things. That will be coming. And also the ability to embed a form on another page using some kind of, I guess, little snippet of code that you can see by other form builders. That will be coming.
Yeah, I think that might be coming. I saw a hint of something like that in the documentation, but yeah, maybe.
This is what we want to see in the future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Any Sitecore people here? No. As Cam mentioned, once you activate your form, you can't change it. You can't edit it. You have what you have. You're stuck with it. It would be nice to be able to edit form fields, because let's say somebody made a typo on a label, and then it's out there and it's been out there for weeks, and finally somebody noticed that, oh no, we've got the L in Salesforce. Something like that. It would be nice to go back and just change that, so you don't have to go create a whole new form to make that work. You can't archive a form when you're done with it. You have the labeling feature to group things together, but it'd be nice to just archive it away and put it somewhere else for later. Pam showed this a bunch of times, but once you submitted a form, you saw the success message at the bottom of the form. It seems a little wonky. It'd be nice to hide the form and just show the message. Yes, there is a way to redirect to a URL. Maybe you can go to a page that just has a label saying, oh, successfully did whatever. But it'd be nice to just hide the entire form at that point. The other thing is you can't move this across environments. You have to rebuild a form in different environments. You can't like package it up like you would in Sitecore, like creating a package and putting it in. You have to go create it again in different environments. Be nice to be able to maybe press a button and have it go to a different environment. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Sitecore, I hope you're listening. You also can't tap into an API to create things on forms. Imagine having an API that will just go create a form for you. That'd be kind of cool.
And maybe that will tie in with the last point, Mike, right?
Yeah, so definitely. We have AI generate forms.
Well, if you have an API endpoint, they can then migrate forms across environments.
The AI would probably need to have an API endpoint anyways, but we'll get to that. Sitecore Connect recipes for webhooks, so it'd be easily, have a way to give that to users to seamlessly connect the two together, no pun intended. And yeah, going back to the AI thing, AI is a cool thing all of a sudden. Everybody wants to do AI because it actually could be useful. Imagine having AI come up with ideas and creating forms for you, or actually create the forms based off of user preferences that it's learned and grabbed from different users over time. That would be kind of cool. And that would definitely map back to the whole API endpoint thing.
And it'd be rather ironic if the AI is suggesting don't use a Google Capture on the form.
And then I'll create a custom one, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Awesome, guys. Anyone have any questions for us? We could try and answer.
No questions, but this is really good demo. I, of course, have to explore it myself. This is great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kamruz.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's perfect. Jamie, like, is that a reason
so you can use this with Next.js as well, Bala, just what I mentioned.
No, I was just asking, was there a reason that once I know it's not like once you activate, you can't edit it, like just thinking out of the box, like Do you see a technical reason that they have it that way? There should be some reason.
Yeah, so the thing I came up with, which then I quickly shot down, was maybe it's because what they're doing is once you activate the form, they kind of create something in the background. And then, with experience forms, we can download the report, the form report. And I was like, maybe it's because of that, because then if you keep adding and removing form fields, it will mess up that form report, right? But then I kind of remembered, it's like, hang on, we don't have a form report because they're not storing any data. It's all going to the webhook. Yeah. So that doesn't matter. I mean, your webhook might get messed up, but that's your problem. So I couldn't really think of a really, really good reason for it, honestly. Maybe it's just one of these things that they had made a choice. I would be surprised if they didn't do something in the future to make them editable, right? And this is a great thing, is because it is a SaaS product. So as soon as they make these changes, you'll just get them overnight as well. You don't have to, like with the old web form to marketers experience forms module, you had to wait for that release cycle for a year or whatever it was. What we have seen, even with XM Cloud, is it's constantly being updated. You're constantly getting enhancements, and you just get them. You don't have to do anything, right? If there's a bug in this,
that's partially.
Okay. Partially, sure. Yeah, there's always some like.
You still need to I believe when the forms was launched, they said like, yeah, you need to get your JSS updated like to the newer.
Yeah, version. You got to update to the latest SDK. I mean, you can still use the forms the forms builder application. You can go and create forms.
Oh yeah,
but you just can't consume them, right? You just can't consume them on your site.
Yeah.
But in terms of like bug fixes and things like that, if there's a bug fix to
the
XM Cloud to the XM Cloud platform, if there's an enhancement to the UI in the Pages application or Components application or Explorer application,
it's like you don't have to upgrade to 10.3 to get the EFF or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That part is good, but partially still upgrading the Next.js
the SDK itself, you have to update, and you have to change yours, and and unfortunately that is the same for anything that where you're using SDK, right?
Absolutely. That's true.
Yeah, any application that you're using an SDK on.
Yeah, it was a pretty good demo, and also showing the webhooks in action and Slack. It was all interesting. Thank you for taking time and showing.
It was really interesting. Like I said, it was zero code. The thing that took me the longest was just trying to figure out what format I need to do. I need to post the data in, and what do the form names mean, and how is Slack then expecting that data to be submitted. And the great thing is all of these are standalone steps, right? You saw that I can use a webhook site from a developer perspective. From the Slack thing, I can actually use Postman to test out my integration, and then I can kind of meet in the middle with Zapier and make all those things happen.
You spend more time on trying to align emojis. That's true.
Yeah.